good summer day. Here it's just gorgeous outside. Blue skies with some clouds. Just a great day to be out in the big wide world. Today we're continuing our study on Little Book, Big Message, a study which we started many months ago to take a look at the smaller books in the biblical text, both in the Old and the New Testament. And we kind of switch back and forth so we can do a little old, a little new, a little old, a little new. And we just finished our work in 2 Peter, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And now we are going to take a look at Habakkuk, which also has 3 chapters, just as 2 Peter did. And we're going to continue on. Also wanted to let you know, of course, the primary thing we're going to be looking at and focusing on and reading and studying is God's Word. That's always going to be on the very upfront. But certainly we want to look at and try to use some additional information. Online, I would recommend BibleCommentary.org, which is Bob Utley's website. Those of you who have heard me teach in the church know that he is a very good, solid, conservative scholar, good church-friendly, good to use with your Sunday school lessons, your sermons, whatever. He does a good job, and he always asks the right questions. He may not give you the answers that you want, but he thinks you ought to have the right questions so you can struggle with those questions and study the Bible for yourself. The other thing that I like about Bob Utley is he always keeps the emphasis on the paragraph level of study. His philosophy on that is that if we study at paragraph level, we're more likely to understand the broader meaning of the text, whereas if we're not careful with verse by verse or even phrase by phrase, we're likely to get that out of context and not relate it to the larger push of the letter as whole. So that very much is a good source. And then just sometimes for information, another online source that I use is called Bible Hub. I don't remember if it's .com or .org or .whatever, but Bible Hub is just a great place to find a whole bunch of different translations of the Bible, as well as primarily older commentaries on there. I think you can find links, I'm not positive, I think you can find links to John Wesley and to Calvin and to A.T. Robertson and just a whole host of commentators from the last couple of centuries that are kind of considered classic pastors or classic interpreters of the biblical text. But I use Bible Hub primarily because it gives me all those different translations, and it even kind of gives me a little bit of help with the Greek and the Hebrew, which is nice. It's not as in-depth as you might want if you were going to study the Bible in Hebrew and Greek, but for a layperson who's maybe never studied Hebrew or Greek, boy, it's a great stair-step source for you to use to kind of check out if your pastor's on target or if something that you're reading is on target in regards to the field of meaning of those words. There's just a lot of good sources on BibleHub. Kind of brings a whole bunch of things together on BibleHub.com. And then I'm going to put a link in the description of this video here to another website. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it to you before or not, White Oak, but there is a great, if you're a video person, if you're a visual learner, there are some magnificent tools coming out of a group called Bible Project. They are on YouTube. All their videos are on YouTube. All their videos are free on YouTube. They're a free biblical source online. I'm going to put a link, and you can see their overview introduction to the book of Habakkuk down there. Listen, my students in the classroom have told me in the past couple of years how much they love those. The Bible Project has just about every book of the Bible done, maybe all of the books of the Bible done now, and now they're working through a lot of themes, words, key ideas, even how to kind of study the Bible, how to do some basic theology work. So far what they've done has been fantastic, and I think their future is exciting. Now let's get on to Habakkuk. Oh, also, as I've used on several of these Bible studies, I like the Tyndale commentaries, both Tyndale Old Testament, which we have here, and the Tyndale New Testament, which I used on 2 Peter. Now, we've used this one before. We've talked about Baker before when we did Nahum. a book or so back. And you can see here, this commentary is on Nahum, Habakkuk, and Zephaniah. And we're going to be doing Zephaniah before too long, so you might guess this is a good source that we'll probably be using there. And it's not too intimidating for those who are not used to reading kind of technical stuff. This commentary said it's very, very much approachable, and I would strongly encourage you to use it. Let's talk about Habakkuk now. And our outline for our study on Habakkuk is going to come from the Baker text as well. As I work through the outline, that's where we're going to focus and put our attention. All right. Let's talk about Habakkuk now. Habakkuk is kind of an unusual book in that most of the time when we read prophets, the prophets bring an accusation that's given from God to the people and tell them that the Lord is not happy with them and that the Lord is going to bring consequences upon them for failing to keep the covenant. Habakkuk doesn't do that. Habakkuk rather complains to God. He questions God. He gives God two big questions, and God responds in the letter. And so Habakkuk's a little different. I don't by any means think that or am suggesting that he's taking it to God, but he is taking his frustration and his complaints and his anxieties about how the world can look this evil and how God can kind of let evil go unchecked without answering. And so he takes the question to God. I think if we could learn that one aspect, we could grow a lot stronger in our faith as well. Listen, when we have a problem or we see an injustice, and or maybe let's say we're mad at God or we're mad at our situation in life, we need to be honest about it, and we need to talk to the person who can do something about it, to God. I don't by any means am suggesting that you be irreverent or belligerent with God, but if you're unhappy and you have a complaint and you think something is going under the radar and God's messing out, I certainly do think you should take those complaints to the Lord and prayerfully listen to His response and go forward from there. We see this happen in several places in the biblical text, not just here in Habakkuk, but famously in the book of Job, where he takes his complaints to the Lord and addresses them to the Lord. That's where they really belong. So don't kick the dog. Don't throw the cat out of the house. Don't take your anger out on them. Take your anger to the Lord and say, Lord, I'm upset, and here's why, and I think it's your fault, or I don't understand why you're not doing anything about it. I think that the Lord will help you come to a better understanding, and you definitely will come to a point of honesty and openness about your feelings with God. The funny thing is, God already knows we're mad at Him anyway. God already knows that we think that He's not doing something that He's supposed to do. So why not just be honest about it and talk it through and give Him the opportunity to speak to us as Habakkuk does him. Now, so that is one of the things that's really unique about the book. As far as the man Habakkuk, we basically know nothing about the man. The book of Habakkuk doesn't say anything about doesn't even give us his dad's name. And that usually at least would get a father's name. No name at all. And in fact, what's even more strange is Habakkuk, the name Habakkuk, is not mentioned anywhere in the biblical text. Now, there's a very famous passage from Habakkuk that you all know, and we'll get to that eventually. And so I'm not saying that Habakkuk was unknown as far as the book goes, but the man is left to antiquity as far as who he was and what he was like, and any details about or biography about the man Habakkuk, we know virtually nothing. We excuse me, we think the book was most likely written between the periods of the fall of the northern kingdom of Israel, which took place in 722 BC, and the fall of the southern kingdom, notably the fall of the city of Jerusalem in that fall, and that took place in 587 BC. So we think that it happened somewhere in that time span, somewhere between 722 and 587, Habakkuk makes his complaints and writes this book of prophecy. Most scholars, from what I've been able to check, not just in Baker but in other places as well, will typically date the book of Habakkuk towards the end of the 600s. So just 20 or 30 years before the destruction of Judah, when God carries out some of the things that he actually says he's going to do in the book of Habakkuk. The structure of the book is pretty straightforward. Question, answer, or we might think of that as complaint, answer, and then finally in chapter 3 we see a prayer, Habakkuk leading out in prayer. As I mentioned earlier, Habakkuk challenged God with not keeping the covenant. And the main theme of the book is a call for all those who sin to be punished. All of them. Habakkuk doesn't understand why the wicked leaders of Judah are not being punished. Those are his own rulers, his own leaders. And he doesn't understand why God would use the Babylonians, who are more wicked than the wicked leaders of Judah, why he would use the Babylonians to punish the people of Judah for their disobedience. Habakkuk wants them all sinners to be punished. And God agrees and promises that punishment of sin for all that are there. And calls the faith to be obedient, calls those who love justice and faithfulness to be obedient and patient, because the Lord is taking care of things in his time. Now, today what I want to do, after we've kind of done that little bit of introduction there, is I want to read the book. That's one of the things that I like about studying these short books, is you can read them in a short amount of time, and I want to do that now, and we'll go from there. So, beginning in chapter 1, hope you have your Bibles out. Beginning in chapter 1 and reading in verse 1. The oracle that Habakkuk the prophet saw. O Lord, how long shall I cry for help? And will you not hear? Or cry to you violence, and you will not save? Why do you make me see iniquity? And why do you idly look at wrong? Destruction and violence are before me. Strife and contention arise. So the law is paralyzed, and justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous, so justice goes forth perverted. Look among the nations and see. Wonder and be astounded. For I am doing a work in your days that you would not believe if I told. For behold, I am raising up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation, who march through the breadth of the earth to seize dwellings not their own. They are dreaded and fearsome. Their justice and dignity go forth from themselves. Their horses are swifter than leopards, more fierce than the evening wolves. Their horsemen press proudly on. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like an eagle swift to devour. They all come for violence, all their faces forward. They gather captives like sand. At kings they scoff, at rulers they laugh. They laugh at every fortress, and they pile up earth and take it. Then they sweep by like the wind and go on, guilty men whose own might is their God. Are you not from everlasting, O Lord my God, my Holy One? We shall not die. O Lord, you have ordained them as judgment, and you, O Rock, have established them for reproof. You are of purer eyes than evil to see evil and cannot do wrong. Why do you idly look at traitors and remain silent when the wicked swallows up the man more righteous than he? You make mankind like the fish of the sea, like crawling things that have no ruler. He brings all of them up with a hook. He drags them out with his net. He gathers them in his dragnet. So he rejoices and is glad. Therefore he sacrifices to his net, and makes offerings to his dragnet. For by them he lives in luxury, and his food is rich. Is he then to keep on emptying his net and mercilessly killing nations forever? I will take my stand at my watchpost and station myself on the tower and look out to see what he will say to me and what I will answer concerning my complaint. And then the Lord answered me, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, so that he may run who reads it. For still the vision awaits its appointed time. It hastens to the end. It will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. Behold, his soul is puffed up. It is not upright within him, but the righteous shall live by faith. Moreover, wine is a traitor, an arrogant man who is never at rest. His greed is as wide as Sheol. His death, like death, he has never enough. He gathers for himself all nations and collects as his own all peoples. Shall not all these take up their taunt against him, with scoffing and riddles for him, and say, woe to him who heaps up what is not his own? For how long? And loads himself with pledges. Will not your debtors suddenly arise, and those awake who will make you tremble? Then you will be spoiled for them. Because you have plundered many nations. All the remnants of the people shall plunder you, for the blood of man and violence of the earth, to cities and all who dwell in them. Woe to him who gets evil gain for his house, to set his nest on high, to be safe from the reach of harm. You have devised shame for your house. By cutting off many peoples, you have forfeited your life. For the stone will cry out from the wall, and the beam from the woodwork respond. Woe to him who builds a town with blood, and founds a city on iniquity. Behold, it is not from the Lord of hosts that peoples labor merely for fire, and nations weary themselves for nothing. For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Woe to him who makes his neighbors drink. You pour out your wrath and make them drunk, in order to gaze at their nakedness. You will have your fill of shame instead of glory. Drink yourself and show your uncircumcision. The cup of the Lord in the Lord's right hand, the cup in the Lord's right hand will come around to you, and utter shame will come upon your glory. The violence done to Lebanon will overwhelm you, as will the destruction of the beast that terrified them. For the blood of man and violence to the earth, to cities and all who dwell in them. What profit is an idol when its maker has shaped it? A metal image, a teacher of lies. For its maker trusts in his own creation when he makes speechless idols. Woe to him who says to a wooden thing, awake, to a silent stone, arise. Can this teach? Behold, it is overlaid with gold and silver, and there is no breath at all in it. But the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silent before him. Chapter 3. A prayer of Habakkuk the prophet according to Shigionoth. O Lord, I have heard the report of you and your work. O Lord, do not fear. In the midst of the years, revive it. In the midst of the years, make it known. In wrath, remember mercy. God came from Timon, and the Holy One from Mount Paran. His splendor covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise. His brightness was like the light. Rays flashed from his hand, and there he veiled his power. Before him went pestilence, and plague followed at his heels. He stood and measured the earth. He looked and shook the nations. Then the eternal mountains were scattered. The everlasting hills sank low. His were the everlasting ways. I saw the tents of Cushan in affliction. The curtains of the land of Midian did tremble. Was your wrath against the rivers, O Lord? Was your anger against the rivers, or your indignation against the sea? When you rode on your horses and your chariot of salvation, you stripped the sheath from your bow, calling for many arrows. You split the earth with rivers. The mountains saw you and writhed. The raging waters swept on. The deep gave forth its voice. It lifted its hands on high. The sun and moon stood still in their place, and the light of your arrows as they sped. At the flash of your glittering spear, you marched through the earth in fury. You threshed the nations in anger. You went out for the salvation of your people and the salvation of your anointed. You crushed the head of the house of the wicked, laying him bare from thigh to neck. You pierced with his own arrows the heads of his warriors, who came like a whirlwind to scatter me. Rejoicing as if to devour the poor in secret, you trampled the sea with your horses, the surging of mighty waters. I hear and my body trembles. My lips quiver at the sound. Rottenness enters into my bones. My legs tremble beneath me. Yet I will quietly wait for the day of trouble to come upon people who invade us. Though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food, the flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. God, the Lord, is my strength. He makes my feet like the deer's. He makes me tread on high places. To the choir master with stringed instruments, this is the word of the Lord. So now we've had a time to hear through the whole book of Habakkuk and see what we're in for. And there certainly is some excellent stuff to work through in this book. And I hope you'll join us next week as we continue our study on Habakkuk in the series, Little Book, Big Messages. Now may the peace of Christ be with you all.